At FAU School of Architecture, we are embracing pragmatic constraints as poetic design opportunity. And we are doing this by combining innovative research methods with professional practice conventions. Even within the very first design studio, students are introduced to computational thinking and making through a series of pedagogical exercises. In the very first exercise titled Making with Rules, students are introduced to something called the carpenter's ellipse. The carpenter's ellipse is essentially 2 pins and a string that are used to make an ellipse. It's a drawing machine. But by changing the location of those pins in space and changing the length of that line, we're able to have essentially an analog parametric model. In the next exercise titled Shapes Carving Shapes, students are introduced to Boolean operation, and this is through both digital and analog means. In addition to that, they learn about solid-void relationships as well as part-to-whole. Then the exercise that follows that is titled Plane Surface Volume. In other words, students learn about folding as a design tool. And within that exercise, they learn about structure and the difference between material thickness versus creating structural depth through a series of folds. They also learn about the relationship between flat 2-dimensional crease patterns and how that crease pattern can be used to create a 3-dimensional geometry. So that 2D, 3D relationship, and how that also starts to suggest means of making or fabrication. And lastly, they learn about the difference between design being a noun and design being a verb, how design is also an iterative, reflective, and rigorous process. In the final exercise titled Curves with Lines, students are introduced to ruled surfaces. Here, through a series of straight lines, students are able to create 3-dimensional surfaces. In many ways, that embraces the pedagogical ethos of Joseph Albers, which is economy of design. How can we do as much as possible with as little as possible? And by the end of the semester, the students have created a whole range of artifacts and drawings as instruments to think with. And from there, these artifacts are not only used to question what architecture is, but what architecture can become.